got Professor Bryan Gregerson and Nancy Gregerson in the house. Thank you guys for coming up and hanging out.
Yeah, it's cool to see where all the magic happens.
With the soon, right? Legacy Boyle Heights. Legacy Boyle Heights, owners of Legacy Boyle Heights.
Yeah.
Professor there, and been teaching now. Tell me your background. Tell me and how you got into jiu-jitsu.
In jiu-jitsu, I had a close family member who was about 5. Well, he still is 5.5 years older than me, and so that person went to high school before me, and there was bullying and what do they call it? Taxing, when it's like basically protection money, more or less, where it's like $20 and you'll be safe kind of thing. So just like kind of
where was this at?
Palos Verdes.
Oh wow!
Of all
really?
places. We had our own.
Rich.
We had our own. Yeah, we had our own
all
stuff.
The rich kids.
We had there's surf gangs.
Yeah.
The Bay Boys and stuff. If you go there and you're not from there, they're gonna slash your tires. And my dad was born in Glendale because there was no hospitals, but he was one of the first surfers in Palos Verdes.
Oh.
And so they didn't. Sorry, this is a little aside, but they didn't have surfboards widely available. So he'd take his mom's wooden ironing board and take the legs off and then carry it. I mean, it's probably like 60 pounds, and carry it down, no fins or anything like that, and they'd surf and whatever. So whenever these like Bay Boys, because he's a surfing photographer now, so when he'd go down there, where are you from, basically kind of thing. He's like, it's like, dude, I've been surfing here since before your dad was born. And like, okay, like that, just like kind of like loser activity, But no real. The only real violence I remember from people like that was like I think someone threw a rock at someone's head one time, like adults though, you know what I mean, like, but children in adult bodies, I should say, but. Your dad was a photographer? He still is. That's what he still is. Okay. He hurt his back a while, like years ago, and so he kind of had to leave the surfing game. And that was like the way he could still participate. Like, for example, if you couldn't do jiu-jitsu anymore, you decide I'm going to photograph it because that's how I could still.
So he was able.
So yeah. So this person was being bullied, and I was like, okay, well, the time is ticking. I'm going, and in middle school I was a little bit heavy. I was a little chubby, if you can believe it. Because now I'm not super skinny, but so yeah, I knew I wanted to do something. And so this is like right when the internet came out and you could get like these little kind of 30-second clips here and there of these random things, but there was no system really to weight these video clips, for example, like Aikido and Judo and different forms of karate and stuff like that. And I saw a few jiu-jitsu things, but...
What year was this?
I'm not good with...
It was years after Hoist Gracie?
This was, but I wasn't aware.
Oh, okay.
It was a sheltered household. There wasn't very much. There's lots of church.
Surfing, no.
I never
cage
surfed.
Fights. Cage fights. No. Surfing, yes.
Something like that. And so, I would kind of get these videos of like these exhibitions and stuff like that, and you'd see this person like the Aikido, for example. They had the cool pants. You've seen the pants. Like I wanted the pants.
Some say cool, some say not so cool.
Well, when you're in 7th grade and there's no context,
right,
like it's like that. But it's cool because you see this guy grab another dude's hand and then he flips.
Yeah, for sure. It's
and
cool.
It's like
it looks cool.
When you don't have, any context of could this happen kind of thing.
What did your mom do?
She was just, a housewife kind of thing.
Okay.
My dad was an artist. He painted tile. He was a hand-painted tile guy. Yeah, so he was a surfer, for fun or whatever, but that's how he made it.
And he used to live in Glendale.
He was born there.
He was born in Glendale.
There was so little infrastructure in Palos Verdes when he lived there that people were landing planes where my grandma's house is now.
Wow.
He saw, like, PV Drive North. I don't know, it's probably a small.
It's your mom, grandmother's is your mom's mom?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so he saw them like blow up the hill to build this road that's like really, just like really been there for a long time. And there wasn't even school, so he had to be bussed out to Lomita and stuff like that. It was very little infrastructure. They probably moved there because the land was cheap and stuff. And
nice.
And so that's how they got there. So I saw these little clips and stuff, and it all looked impressive. But there's no way, without having seen UFC, there's no way of knowing. Honestly, I assumed all of it was real because the guy's flipping. Why would you flip if now you can see the person wants it to be true or whatever the case may be. But so I was really undecided, and in a sense that it was really good for me when I saw Walker Texas Ranger, like I think I mentioned at the Black Belt promotion ceremony, because they had the Machado brothers on, and I remember that the shows were always the same. They always start with someone getting kidnapped, like this damsel in distress kind of thing or whatever. The whole team works to solve the crime, but it's somehow at the very end, Chuck Norris is separated from everybody. It's him versus whoever this guy in all black is. And there's, he'll land a few shots, but there's going to be a spinning kick, and that's how. And so the episode really stood out to me because it was so different from all the other ones. And like I said, I was a little bit hefty in middle school, 13-minute mile kind of thing. You know what I mean? And so when I saw
something about it attracted you that you wanted to do it.
I was like, I could do
it. Was that video with Chuck Norris and the Machado brothers?
Yeah,
that you're like, man,
that episode, when I saw that, when I would see the spinning kicks, I'd be like, okay, that's cool, that works, but I can't do that. I can't move my body like that, unfortunately. But then when you see these guys kind of grab someone and do these things that are relative to spinning kicks, jiu-jitsu slow, and I was like, I can be slow, like that's who I am right now, and so that's how I got into it, and only after that did I. Understand its power.
And you searched out for the Machados?
Well, that was the funny thing, is that I remembered it started with an M, but this is before TiVo, this is before anything on demand.
Google.
And so you had to wait until, if you want to see an episode, you better watch every single episode until they replay everything. So I got to a point where I was getting a little bit old for the show, but I'd still continue to watch it, hoping, and I'd watch the first, this isn't it, I'd turn it off.
It was the Walker Texas Ranger?
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And so I would keep watching the
it's a funny story is when I first, my first jiu-jitsu coach, he was a Navy SEAL, and he trained with Carlos Machado. And then he went back to the Navy SEALs, and he was a student of Carlos Machado, and Carlos Machado moved to Texas.
Yeah, he's in Texas.
And so when we were trying to, keep our training up. And so we went to Texas one time.
Oh, cool.
And Carlos Machado's gym was inside the Walker Texas Ranger studio.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, like Travis Luter, like all these old, like these black belts, ended up being Tim Burrell and all these like old school black belts were in that like room. So you had to walk through the set,
cool.
yeah. And then you got to the, to the room, and it was like blocked off with the sound and all that. And it was really cool.
Were you in New Mexico?
I was in New Mexico at the time.
I
went with a friend. I was probably 18 at the time.
Yeah.
And then I watched him, and he's just, it was all white belts, right? And him, the black belt, right, extraordinaire. And then he just like lined everybody up and trained with every single person, tapped every single person out. Yeah. And Carlos Machado, if you know him, but super like good guy, nice guy, technical. Of course, like all the Machado brothers. So
yeah. So
I had a really good, a big impression. Yeah. Gracie Baja, and that's how we ended up actually going to Gracie Baja in Brazil. My friend, is because Carlos Machado was like, you need to get with the Machado brothers. Not Machado brothers, with Gracie Baja. You used to go to Gracie Baja in Rio, in Baja.
That's super cool. Yeah, it's so funny how everyone somehow kind of gets into it
interconnected. Yeah.
So
Sorry.
But no, it's good, and it's always good to hear how people got into this thing, because we all end up in the same place, but our starting points are so radically different, which is one of the beauties of it. With all these people I'd never be friends with, not because I'm better or worse, but it's just like I don't know highway patrol officers, I don't know chefs. That's not I was a teacher. I don't come in contact with them, but. And so, long story short, that's kind of how it happened. And so I found
how old are you when you started?
At this point, I did my research at
so you were a teenager.
I was 8th grade.
8th grade, okay.
13, something like that. And then it kind of fell by the wayside.
What Machado gym did you find?
Keegan and Hodger in Torrance on 190th.
Torrance, okay.
Yeah. So
what year was that, do you think?
That would have been around 2000.
2000.
So I remember a lot of these people, like when they're talking about the Dirty Dozen, like, man, I knew that guy.
I think, I went there before that. I went there after that too, I think.
There was a lot of people that
they had both of the spaces, and they went down to one.
I left before the downsizing.
Oh, okay.
But they had that, and there's so many little magical moments. People
and Higgin Machado had the socks on the mat, and like
I remember him walking.
Come in just with the top on. And, hey guys,
like the Sambo outfit.
Rico Rodriguez is around.
Yeah. And so I remember just being a kid, and I remember him kind of almost elephant-like. His legs were like this big around. And everybody, and it was so casual back then too. There was no professor, there was no. So when it
was a fight club kind of environment for sure.
A lot of the people at that gym ended up or had already served time. But it was really healthy for me to be around these.
There was good quality people too there for sure.
Of course, there was lawyers, veterinarians, heart doctors, and then a few
doctors,
sketchy people.
Police, for sure. But that's the beauty thing about jiu-jitsu, right? Is that it gives everybody a chance.
Yeah.
And everybody's the same, and all this there's no politics. It's just your human spirit.
And then one of this guy who was teaching the kids class, Mario Romero, who's a purple belt at the time. I remember seeing him get his brown belt and whatever, and then we disappeared, and I stopped training for a long time. And then I ended up running into him again, And now he's a 4th degree black belt, and like, man, and he ended up teaching at our gym for a little while. And so it's just strange how then also your paths can separate again and then rejoin again. And it's such a small world.
Yeah.
So
and so,
I don't remember
probably 2.5 years. I got my blue belt, I think, on my 16th birthday, something like that. Man, I was doing really well, like 5 days a week, borrowing my mom's car.
In Torrance. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so I'd borrow my mom's car. That was my motivation.
Why'd you stop?
Because I hurt my shoulder, and no one told me about physical therapy. I thought that when you're hurt, you stop doing the thing. And even worse than that.
Shit, I came up to leg it. I would have told you.
Well, yeah, I should. You're absolutely right. You know,
I took the arm away. Keep going, man.
I stopped even using like opening doors. Where I stopped using, and so that made it worse. You know, and then when my students, 10, 11 years down the line, when they tried to get me to do it again, started using body weight again, started getting better. It's like, man, I missed out.
Wish I would have known, yeah.
You know, but it's okay. I did a lot of other stuff. I wasn't sitting at home doing nothing. You know, I was doing stuff. But
and then you went to college. You became a teacher, right? Yeah. You want to tell me?
Yeah, I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. It was just something that I gravitated towards, and so.
Why is that? Somebody in your family?
I just felt like, you know, sometimes you just instinctively know what you're good at and what you're not good at, and I was not good at a lot of things. I was not good at sports. My mom put me in basketball, and I tried all these different things, but it never panned out. Tennis, art class, it never was for me or whatever until jiu-jitsu. And so, because to me, it's not a sport. It's like my brain versus your brain, you know, my wisdom versus your wisdom or whatever. And so I just I was good though at conveying knowledge in a way I think that is concise and in a way that people can understand. And so I always knew that I liked it. And so I went to USC. I thought I was going to teach in PV, and the grad program there was basically for urban education, which is a nice way of saying really, you know, low income, inner city kind of whatever. And so that's what we were trained for. It's like, okay, well, I'll just do this instead.
Why'd you gravitate towards that?
Because I had
especially
to.
growing up in
I had to.
Palo Verdes.
So I was at USC for undergrad, and then I got into the master's program there immediately, and it was just convenient. I already had a place rented. I knew I got a lot of recommendations from people who were already there, professors who were already there and stuff. So I knew I could get in, it'd be convenient. I already had my place and blah, blah, blah. And then I told myself, oh, you can probably student teach where you want without really investigating. I kind of purposely keeping myself in the dark because I was scared. You know, I mean, going from where I came from to where I was student teaching was quite a difference. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the kids. Because it's one of those things where if you were, for example, to teach in Palos Verdes Jiu-Jitsu or something like that, it's like, you know, the rewards are cool, but there's very few risks, you know, and so the risks and the rewards are proportional to one another. And so the less there is on the line, the less there is of craziness going on, the less kind of accomplished you'd feel coming home. Because it's like, well, you know, a lot of kids, when they have the parental support and they have the literacy and they grew up with books in the home and stability and whatever, you could more or less leave them alone and they'll kind of educate themselves because they don't have to worry like that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They don't have to worry about safety or am I going to eat or like, you know, single parent issues.
You have to fight for the underdog, huh?
Exactly. You know, and so they would more or less be able to take care of themselves, not because they're better people, but because their access to things is so much greater and easier and safer and all that. And so the inverse is then true of teaching in the inner city where the risks are a lot greater, both emotional and physical for both you and the students, but that also means that the high is greater and the rewards are greater. And so, yeah, you have a lot of failures, and Nancy, I'm sure, will have a lot of stories about that too, because she experienced more or less the same thing, but it's more rewarding.
So Nancy, your background, what was your education?
Yeah, I actually started in retail. I started working super early, but at 18, I decided to go to education. So I have similar.
So during high school and stuff, you were doing retail?
Yeah.
Like
so
worked at retail stores and stuff.
I was 12 when I first had my first job.
She's had an adventure of a life.
Wow.
But that was like at a warehouse. You know, it was like a fashion company, and I was doing
downtown LA.
No, actually in Montebello, where my mom is from.
Oh wow.
So near our home, there's all these like big warehouses, and I used to walk from middle school to my house, and I used to always see these warehouses, and they had these big sample sales, and I just met the owner, and I was like, she was like, hey, do you want a job? And I was like, Yeah, so
no cardio.
Yeah,
no
so
cardio.
it was like schoolwork, since I was 12 more or less. And then when I was 16, I finally got like a legal, job at my school actually. So I was doing basically like customer service, for the parents and the kids in the school. And then I started to do retail right away, like PacSun demo, all these kind of pretty like mall like kind of spots. And then
it was like the surf skateboarder kind of,
yeah,
but not the cool guys, but the kind of
right.
a little bit.
Yeah, and like demo was like it's an old retail from PacSun, and there was like a hip hop one, like the Echo brand,
a little more your pace.
Yeah, Rockaware,
Echo, yeah.
All of those like hip hop brands.
Yeah.
So yeah, I actually started there, and I ended up managing that place, and then from there I went to a few other spots. But I always knew I wanted to help other people, and I think from the mentors that I had in high school and middle school, I knew I wanted to do something similar. So yeah, I got into it too. My first experience was similar to Bryan's. It was in the inner city, like in the middle of Watts. So that was my first job. Like I always kind of go hard, just like if I can survive this. Yeah, I commit.
Your parents are you're from. Your mom and dad are from? So
my mom and dad are from Mexico. My mom was brought here for schooling when she was like high school, and then they came here like 95. So I was born here. We went back to Mexico City, and then we came back here in 95. Yeah. So I
Miss International.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So I started my education experience or my career in Watts, which is again in the middle, just in that middle of that community. And it was a similar experience to Bryan. I figured if I can connect with these students, if I could do good in this place where I'm, there were similarities based on just what I saw with the students, with the parents, with my life, so I can connect with them. But again, I figured if I can do this, if I can make an impact here, then everywhere else I go, I have like an upper hand by doing the hardest thing now. Yeah. So that's kind of what I decided to stick with that, and for a couple of years, and then from then on, I knew I wanted to be a teacher of something, teach something. Unlike Bryan, I think he knew he wanted to teach history. Yeah. Right away.
I just like
you wanted to teach.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's like a historian. I know he says he's a teacher, but I think he's a historian. I mean, he, he's
yeah. Sure. But I think I majored in the Polish. It was like medieval Poland.
I had no idea. Slavs. I didn't even know that.
The whole Polish.
You just wanted to tell stories on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Give the in the hood and tell his
stories.
Well, so. I always knew it was sort of a competition, and I think Nancy has a lot of, and you obviously have a lot of competition in you too, and you have to make it that far in jiu-jitsu or in teaching in difficult areas is the same thing, where people are weeded out,
Yes.
and I'm, don't mean to compare people to weeds, but some people can make it and some people don't make it, I'm sure everybody has the capability of doing it, but for some reason or another that doesn't happen, but it's just there's
how long you guys are educators? I mean, you've been teaching jiu-jitsu now for how long is the?
So like 3 years, 3 years,
3 years, okay.
Yeah.
You guys are teaching for how long?
Wow. So for me it's been, but altogether,
so
from high school all the way to jiu-jitsu, it's been
over a decade.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. I guess what I meant to say though about the competition is that I always felt like when someone was teaching something, I always felt like I could do this better. And so there was that competition of wanting to show, yes, I can do it. And so it's kind of a bad motivation, trying to be competitive with others instead of lifting each other up and blah. But you can't help it. You are who you are, or whatever. And so you try to turn it into something as positive as you can. But
so I wanted to ask you, like, what makes people from your over decade experience of teaching be successful and not successful from a teacher's perspective?
I would say they have to be able to adapt. I taught high school very early. I mean, I was 22 maybe, so that's something I might have changed if I could go back. But I taught high school when I was that young, and I remember just trying to get the students to think for themselves. So I would ask open questions like, hey, what do you think about this? And it was just kind of like this kind of, they were so used to being told that there was an answer, or if you go on page 12, you know, if you look at that paragraph under this, it'll tell you the answer. So they were so afraid to tell me what they would think, you know. So that was one thing that I learned really quickly, that so many of the students were already conditioned to not be able to speak up about what they think, you know what I mean? Like they couldn't even say, like, well, I think this is fair or this is unfair, you know. So they were so conditioned, you know, again, to be right or wrong, or to be ridiculed for being right or wrong. So one thing that I noticed just from, you know, some of our students are, I mean, grown adults, not, you know, have kids, the people who we who were
things
in
don't
our
change,
classrooms.
right? Even at
Yeah.
adults.
Exactly.
And I think it was, for me, it was that, like, that some of them understood that they had the capability to be able to come up with solutions on their own, you know, or just create questions, or, you know, just kind of be able to think for themselves, or to listen to, you know, you, or go to Bryan's class, go to Professor Alberto's class, go to my class, and then collect all of those lessons, collect all of those, you know, thoughts. Was he right? Was he wrong? Maybe that, and then come up with
your own conclusion.
right. And that was something that for the students that are successful, you know, went to school or didn't go to school but are doing something on their own, whether it's through social media or just like their own business, is that they were able to adapt to so many personalities. And because they were able to adapt, like they could sit through your class without being disrespectful, even though maybe they didn't like you, or they could sit through his class and they thought he was boring. But, you know, again, this adaptation of,
They were able
hey,
to pivot and adapt
right,
to the
exactly.
environment.
Right, that they didn't have to, you know, tell Bryan.
With their attitudes.
Exactly, yeah.
Change
That was
their attitudes.
that was a big thing that I try to push on high schoolers. Like, hey, it doesn't matter who you like in the school. You know, you treat each class and you respect the teacher, the educator who's trying to give you their perspective, and you don't have to say, oh, I don't like that guy, so I'm not going to listen to it. No, you listen to it, and then you develop your own understanding or your own critiques of, you know, whatever.
Try to understand the teacher,
Yeah.
Where he's coming from.
Exactly, yeah. And again, so many of them, they were so you know, if you told them, take your pencil out, it's like, oh, okay, he's a jerk, you know. So it's just like, just take your pencil out, Matt. Like, you just got to get through this. This is the way, you know, this is the way it works. And those people that were able to adapt, and were also able to vocalize any thoughts, even if they were wrong, or if they, you know, we've all said crazy things when we were young, or wrong things, but they weren't afraid to at least
try
it out.
To
Exactly,
try.
yeah. So this adoption thing, and then this thing of letting that fear of, like, am I going to be right? Am I going to be wrong? You know, kind of
just trying.
Yeah, just kind of shake it off, and this is me, and this is what I can come up with. And
How does it translate, like, for an adult doing jiu-jitsu, for example, like you were saying about being able to change your attitude and things? How does that translate to a jiu-jitsu class?
As Nancy, you mean as a student?
As an adult, right? No.
Just generally as Nancy was talking, one of the things that my mind went to was, like she's saying, the idea of adaptation. And then when she mentioned adaptation, my mind kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent, where it's sort of like, you know, as a teacher, and it's probably the same for you, when someone walks in, say a new white belt walks in or something like that, or in our case, a new student walks in, you kind of know who's going to be the troublemaker and who's not, right? You kind of know who's going to be giving you pushback and who not. And the real trick is to embrace that person immediately. Like, for example, I had a kid because my first school was in South LA, and I think it was the lowest performing school in the state. And there was a kid that you just knew from the beginning, this is going to be a long year. And so the first thing I did is I owed the counselor like $5 because she paid for something at some school event or something like that. So I took $5 out of my wallet. This is a kid who's never been trusted by anybody in his whole life. $5 out of my wallet, put a little note to the, you know, whoever I owed money to. And I forget the kid's name, let's call him John. And it's like, hey, John, come over here. He's like, what? I didn't do it. It's like, I didn't say you did anything. I need you over here. Like, I need you to take this money and I need you to go to the counselor's office. You need to be back here in 5 minutes. It's 8:30. I need you back here at 8:35. Can you do this for me? Yeah. And he's back. And he delivered the money. He didn't take. And so making this person your ally as soon as possible is really helpful. But you can also apply that,
Giving them a repetition to live up to. Huh?
Exactly, because in their mind, they think that you don't know them. Of course, you've been warned by teachers, oh man, I have him in 7th grade, and he was, you know, like that kind of thing. And so, but you can also, I think, apply that same type of thinking to say, for example, positional, like in jiu-jitsu, for example, up until my end of my blue belt, I was only a guard player. That's it. Because I had no choice when I first started. I went from being kind of husky to being tall and skinny. I went like this, you know. It's like 135 pounds at 6 feet tall, an inch shorter than I am now. I'm 170 and I'm still skinny, you know. And so I had to play guard. I had no choice. You know, I was going to force my way on the top. So if I would sweep, I would never want to sweep anybody because then I'm on top and now I'm screwed, you know? And so it's the same thing. It's like, okay, identify who's my biggest problem, or in this case, what position's my biggest problem.
What are your weaknesses?
Top game, right? And so, you know, I know you have a lot of students, you know, rolling all the time, but I think a lot of times you'll see me when I'm rolling in class, I'm trying to pass guard and be on top as much as I can because I feel like my body at, you know, 170, 6'1" is tailor-made for bottom, right? And so what my mindset is, instead of making top my enemy and this thing I want to avoid, okay, well, if I'm naturally designed for a bottom game, what if I just devoted, and this is what I did when I started training with you kind of mid-purple belt, what if I take this opportunity as a fresh start? Because I think if you had seen me train at Professor Mark's gym where I was spending more of my time at that moment, you would have seen a guard player. And when I switched over here, I kind of changed my identity, but you didn't know because you didn't know me before. And my entire second half of purple belt, all my brown belt, and still to now, is I'm all about passing. I've taken this thing that I thought that I hated, identified like, okay, I don't like this position because I'm not good at it. And so when you become good at something, then you start to like it. Well, how do you become good at something? You have to do it. Right. And so I feel like some of these lessons
getting
can be generalized.
Comfortable and uncomfortable.
And now
like
you're comfortable.
You want to do the same, like stuff that you're good at, right?
Yeah.
That's what everybody's tendency is to do. But then being able to pivot, right, and try stuff that you're not good at.
And so the latest instructional I bought is half guard because I hate half guard.
Okay, there you
so
go.
Now I'm going to be playing half guard.
Nice. That's it. So, that's it. Nice.
You know.
So being able to do stuff that you're not good at and changing your mindset, right? Changing your mindset.
Yeah,
So being able to pivot
to other parts in your life. Like even though we were talking about adults, I'm thinking about one moment in my jiu-jitsu kids class. We had a strong girls team for some reason, like even though jiu-jitsu is mainly male dominant. And these girls were being bullied by a younger boy. You know, let's say he was 7 and they were 11, 12, 13. And they would come to me and this is kind of my style of teaching, where they're coming to me, oh, you know, he's saying, I'm going to beat you, you know, you're a loser. And they always came to me and always telling me. And, you know, I sat them down and say, this is not the first time this is going to happen to you. This is not the first time a man's going to come to you and say, oh, I can beat you, you know. And they're thinking as girls, well, he's a boy. And they see that he's shorter and he's smaller and he's, you know, less experienced in life, right? But yet they're still so threatened by, you know, this image of, you know, this boy, and he wants to be dominant and he's threatening. And so I told them, you know, why don't you go ahead and ask him why he's saying that? You know, hey, why are you saying that to me? You know, so it makes me think of, like, as an adult, you know, when I started jiu-jitsu, you know, because it's about dominance, right? And I experienced it a little bit when I was 16. I didn't like it. And then when I did it as an adult, and I was being bullied essentially, right, by these other white belts that, you know, I was fresh, and these other white belts, you know, they smell you and they're like, I want to play with her. So,
and she's 5 feet tall, 5 pounds, you know.
So, you know, it was a game of dominance, and it was that, you know, me looking back into what I try to teach my students is like, you know, trying to adapt to this, like, instead of being afraid and saying, oh, well, I wasn't good at that, like, look at all these girls and boys
growth mindset instead of fixed mindset.
Right. It's just like, oh, man.
Going back to all the
it was like, I'm never going to get bullied again. And then from that, it was like, now I'm coming, you know, and having to deal with dominance, you know, same thing when you're going through schooling or even college.
So they got you. So instead of having a fixed mindset, I'm this way,
right,
and being able to change and have a growth mindset where you can adapt to whatever that comes.
And the thing that I think Nancy didn't mention at the end is then she instructed the girls to go out and don't hold back, and we got to beat this kid, you know, and that was one of the things that I think I wouldn't have, because I was more of a high school teacher, and so I didn't have to deal with the same problems. She was more a primary school, elementary, and so that was one thing that was really cool for me to see.
You were high school?
Yeah. And so it was really cool for me.
You were in Watts as well?
I was in South Central, and I was in East, like Boyle Heights. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And so and then after she said that, now you need to go out and beat this kid, you know? And that was the cool thing about it too, because my instinct was to, okay, I'm going to go over and I'm going to talk to the boy and you can't blah, blah, blah. But her perspective was so much more rooted in reality. And I think that's sort of a symptom of some of the complaints of people of our generation and a little bit younger and I don't think it's entirely our fault, but it's a different subject. But this sort of the symptom of someone's going to go and fix your problem versus Nancy saying like, you think this is the first time someone's going to do this to you? Okay, so this is going to be a practice for you. Someone's saying these things to you, and you need to go fix this. She didn't go over to the boy and say a word. It's the exact opposite of what I would have done. And she did them a much greater service than I would have done them. I would have been training them to go find a man or somebody to go fix their problem for them. And that's not what she did. And I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Nice.
That, you know.
Nice. What high school did you teach at?
I taught through like local District 8, which is kind of near like the 110 and the 105.
So, but that's Boyle Heights.
So that was South. Now it's called South LA, but it was South Central, you know, basically. So the neighborhood itself was. Yeah, it was right at kind of on the border of Gardena and LA. So the area itself was nice, but the students came from the north, which is right in the center of kind of where you don't want to be living.
I see.
And then I went to Boyle Heights, which is more of a immigrant community and stuff like that. And so
Boyle Heights, that was our high school there.
That was a high school as well, yeah.
What was the name of that high school?
Mendez High School.
Mendez. Okay.
We actually had a jiu-jitsu club there too. Those are the kids that got me back into it. Oh,
nice.
Mister, I heard you know self-defense. Like, yeah, a little bit. You know.
So that's what. So going to that. Is that how you found your way back to jiu-jitsu?
That's how I got back into it. So we stole the mats from the cheerleaders because they weren't using them on Fridays or something like that. So we would lay them out, and we got a bunch of just like this motley crew of kids who, again, back to the kind of the beauty of jiu-jitsu, bringing people together who normally would not be associating with one another. And so we started doing that. We had tall girls, short boys, heavy girls, heavy boys, skinny, everybody you can imagine. And my friend Fred Simmons, he was his idea, I think, initially, and then he told them to come harass me to help because I think he was a blue belt from way back in the day. I mean, like 96, something like that. And I was a blue belt from 2003. And so with our kind of frail memories together, we could probably put a class together for the kids, and that's what we ended up doing. And so I told him from the beginning, hey, if my shoulder starts bugging me, you got to leave me alone. I'm not doing this anymore. But as I started carrying weight on it and doing kind of body weight, almost more like tack fitty stuff versus, lifting and stuff, just kind of using your own weight and your own motion and momentum to get that strength going. And I was like, I'm cured. And then I went to your gym, I think, GB Hollywood, and then you sold it for Preston Mark. Yeah, so with him.
Were you living in Hollywood at the time?
No, I was living in downtown. I was making.
Oh, you were in downtown.
It was quite a trek, yeah. But I made the drive.
So how'd you find the gym?
I think probably just Yelp or something.
Yelp or Google.
Yeah. But it was so different when I came back. When I saw the black bars on the stripes and the black bars with the stripes,
right?
I was like, oh man, is this becoming kind of like Taekwondo-ified? Right. And now I can kind of see some of the wisdom. And I know you're not really a big stripe guy anyway, maybe for like the white belts and stuff.
Yeah, because back in the day, you didn't really have the red bar and all that. It was just like you just had a black belt. Like my first black belt, I didn't have the red bar and the.
Yeah, it was all kind of different.
It was raw. Like if you're a black belt, if you're a blue belt, if you're a purple belt, it meant like a lot, back in those days.
And it was such a special time. And it's one of those things where I think I was reading about like the music scene in New York in the 2000s. I just got a cool new book on it. And they're talking about how we're all potentially even right now, maybe you're living in your golden age right now, but you don't know it. And you'll know it 15 years down the road and be like, wow, well, those are the days or whatever. And so you should live your life as if this is the golden age right now.
I mean, before the lockdown, I was kind of grateful that, I really gave everything I had, with like between the surges, taking the pictures, and everybody's kind of like superstars,
Yeah.
And then kind of just having those moments because you're like, come parties, like, man, are we ever gonna do jiu-jitsu again on the mat? Like how it was, right? Because you start hearing people like the new normal and all this. You're like, what? Like. And so, made me like appreciate like everything that we did do. Man, those were the days, right?
Yeah, and unfortunately, those days were a month ago. 2 months ago, or whatever it was. It's strange to think about that. So, but yeah, when I came, I remember like thinking like the stripes were weird, and it's like, man, are they just patting us on the back? I wasn't sure what it was.
Because we try to keep it old school, huh?
Yeah, you do. Yeah. And that was one of the things I really liked.
Because the greasy ball, like it's nice to have the stripes and stuff, but you should just keep it real, right? Like
I could see it for white belts.
Some kind of organization, white belts for sure, but then after that, it's like It's not about that, right?
My white belt started to turn brown because it was dirty. And then I got a new one, and it was blue. And then I remember this guy, Jair, who would, again, would always wear his socks, back to the sock theme or whatever. And I remember his brown belt was, it was threads. It's threads. Okay, well, it's time for a black belt. And that's how you know. What's the difference, Yeah. And I remember when I came back. Unless
the guy gets his purple belt or brown belt and he starts sanding it down, right? So to make it look like that.
Well, now they sell those too. They sell that. Don't they sell those?
Stonewashed belts.
Don't they sell pre-worn belts now?
I don't think so. I don't think they better not sell. I don't think they would sell. I think they would get. I'm
not going to name a name, but I think
I've seen
someone with one. But anyway, so
I don't know if they'd be selling those. That would take a lot of flack.
People get low. Yeah. I'm not going to say, but and I remember one time going for a straight foot lock from the bottom, and I guess it would be worse whoever buys that, right? Yeah. I knew a guy in high school would take his football helmet, and he was waiting for a carpool, and he's around the corner or whatever, and he'd take it and he'd crack it on the side of the concrete. My friend walked around. He's like, "What do you?" "Oh, nothing." Guy never got to play, but his helmet's all marked up. So
it looked like it's like the guys that make the cauliflower ear on their ears, just so they look like the white belts. The white belts they do that to
I'll never
make them look like they're experienced.
I know one person like that. I'll never get it. Purposely grinding. That shit hurts, man.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay, so you got to start. And so you found the gym in Hollywood, Google or Yelp or whatever.
Something like that. And because that was the closest one at the time. So
and I was still there.
You were there, but I was
kind of fading out a little bit.
Well, it sounds dumb to say, man, but I for some reason I purposely avoided going to your class. I didn't want to meet you, and I don't know why. It was very strange, but this is like a little insight.
Because I was there on certain days, right?
I think you were there on Wednesdays, and I was like, I'm gonna go Tuesdays and Thursdays then. I don't know.
Who was there?
Just some of your old students who used to train here.
Okay, gotcha.
Just some like colored belts.
Was Anthony there?
Oh, in terms of students?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember a few. I remember like Daniel Fernandez. I remember
Professor Anthony.
Yeah. Professor Anthony. Yeah. I remember him being there, but a lot of people, that a lot of people don't make it. It's very, very difficult.
I would say at the beginning, like they get weeded out, right?
But yeah, I know. And some of it's, it's not everyone's weak, so they have a job.
Right, no, for sure. But life gets in the way.
But
for
things are the way they are, and you have to not only have the motivation, but you have to have the time and the money as well. But yeah, so that was cool. But I also remember like going for a foot lock, and like some guy was standing my guard, and back in the day, I just reaped the crap out of his knee. Because that was legal. We were doing heel hooks in the gi. All these new rules. I was like, man, I don't know. I was going to quit because I was like, I don't know about this.
You were too old school.
I was a little old school. Yeah. But I stayed.
Then you pivoted.
I did. Yeah. You're exactly right. I changed
your mindset.
Yeah, and I understand now.
Growth
like, okay,
mindset.
Maybe
good,
blue belts
good teacher.
shouldn't be reaping knees, I guess, in the gi. But yeah, so that's kind of where that went. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And then how did you guys meet? Were you at that gym or was it after?
That was after. He introduced me to it. Well, he tried to get me to do it for a year or something, and then I went in.
Oh, so you guys met outside of the gym.
Yeah. We met through a mutual student. I met her when she was 12. I was doing like some volunteer work in her middle school, and I had, still in touch with her since 12, and she ended up in his senior class.
Yeah, I had her as a junior and senior. She was going through some rough times, whatever, so I was there for her during those, and then.
And you were in touch with her from.
So yeah, I had been. I'm still, since 12, and so then one day she's like, "Hey, I'm graduating, and my teacher is taking me out to dinner. Can you chaperone me?" And I was like, I was so like, "Why? I'm not gonna go to this. Like, he's your teacher." And I was like,
she didn't know it was a trap. So it was an engineered trap. So
she planned it all out.
Yeah. So the girl came to me. This is like say on like a Wednesday or something like that, and she was graduating on say a Friday, and so. Obviously you're not allowed to, and you should not be hanging out with your students if a lot of teachers don't respect this and they're in jail, but you just shouldn't do that. Right. And so I was like, she's like, you have to meet my friend. It's like, I can't date high schoolers, but thank you very much. Well, she's like, no, my friend's a teacher. It's like, oh, okay. So she's like a real person, like, okay, cool. And I was just getting out of something, and so she's like, you have to meet her. She's really cool. She's smart. You two will get along, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, and then, we basically hatched a plan because she was more or less graduated. She was going to graduate in like 3 days. And so I was like, okay, if you really want me to meet her, let's do it like this. Let's say this, your graduation present, I'm going to take you out to a dinner in Chinatown. and you get to bring a friend. And if that friend is her, then, and so that's how we set it up.
Okay.
And so Nancy was fooled into meeting me by me and a high schooler. And so we did, and we went, and it was a great time. She was 3 hours late.
The student?
No,
You were.
I was fine with the
And I hate that. I was about to be like, this is not for me. And she was
trying to get her to be independent. Like, hey, this
because she didn't know it was a trap.
Oh, I see.
I had no idea.
She was trying to back up, be like, this is your teacher. You have to do this.
I've known her since she was 12, so I thought she was intimidated by that, or she.
You wanted to be,
right. So
handle it, yeah.
Like, you need to do this on your own. She's like, please.
And then she kept texting you or something?
Yeah, she's like, please, it's the last favor I'll ask of the year. And I was like, okay, I'll go.
So they were super late.
And then what happened? Both of you were?
Because they came together.
Right,
they were going to come to my house and pick me up.
So she was convincing you the whole time, or what?
Right.
Yeah, so it was 3 hours of convincing.
Oh my God.
So that's how it worked. And then we took a few pictures all together, and we took it on my phone, and I was like, oh, let me text them to you. And then, what's your number?
That's
when she knew it was a setup.
Professor Bryan techniques.
And then yeah. Growth mindset.
Why did you want my phone number? I even asked the girl, like, hey, like, he asked for my number. Are you okay with that? I didn't know what was happening, or if she thought, like, this was something. But then I found out. I was like, okay, it all makes sense.
And she knew it was a setup.
Yeah,
cool.
we were chaperoned by her for a couple dates, and then I felt safe.
So that was that. And then we got married.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then you convinced her to do jiu-jitsu?
I was doing it for so long, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe you remember what the breaking point was, but why?
Well, I think I was looking for a new exercise. Like, I had been doing yoga, since 16. I'd just been doing some form of exercise. And
she was saying,
yeah.
I want to, it's just like, I'll come to jiu-jitsu. Oh, I'm looking for new exercise. Just do jiu-jitsu with me. Like, no, I want something that's going to be hard and make me sweat. And I was like, oh my God.
And he's like, you need to come. I didn't know it. It was
and so you went to the one on was it Gardner?
I went to the one on Gardner, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was my that experience that I told you, where I was like.
And you had never seen jiu-jitsu before?
I had seen it, but
on YouTube.
I saw it when I was in community college. Like, I was 16, and I was hanging out with a few wrestlers.
She was the score girl. She was like the stats girl.
The stats girl for a wrestling team, and they did MMA
in high school?
and jiu-jitsu in college.
College, okay. Gotcha.
And they did MMA and jiu-jitsu. So I tried it one time. I was 16.
She was high school age in college.
Yeah.
She did her own. Education.
So I missed that.
Nice.
So I went to college while in high school to try and finish fast. So I was fairly young. So my boyfriend at the time was like, hey, come try jiu-jitsu. And I was like, okay, so I was too young, and the man that they paired, I was 16, he must have been maybe 40, and we were doing a foot lock, and his feet were all over me, and I was too immature, I couldn't deal with it. But then, he introduced me to it,
So
I came.
She tried it again.
I got bullied, and I was like, I need to be the bully.
But she's super competitive. She can't stand it.
Yeah,
so even if she didn't like jiu-jitsu, she would have done it anyway.
And so you went to do class, you did class, and what was your impression the next time? At Professor Mark's gym, right?
Right. I was at Professor Mark's gym. I was so fascinated with how technical it was, and I was looking at what they were doing, and I couldn't stop what was happening to me. It was like, being in the guard or on mount and not being able to escape, this dominant, 120-pound girl. And I was so confused by it, but at the same time, so mesmerized at how technical and how efficient jiu-jitsu was. Yeah. Right, exactly, and it was such a game to me. It was like chess, and that's really what
she had a reputation of being incredibly violent.
Well, I was a scrappy white belt.
She caught.
Did you compete?
Elbows, you catch knees.
I did. I did maybe like Pan's World.
She got third at Pan's.
Oh, nice.
I feel. I mean, I don't know if I'll try it ever again, but it was. The nerves were intense. I mean, like, my first fight, I gave it my all.
Her first tournament was the Pans.
And it was the best fight I ever had. And then after that, it was like my legs were numb, everything was numb, I couldn't move. So ever since then, I've tried to recover. And I did the Worlds and the Pans right after that as a blue belt. And it just wasn't for me at the time. But I'm not sure.
You were more or less a brand new blue belt going out into the war. I mean, you don't as an adult.
Again,
so she did adult female blue belt. I mean. These are professionals,
Professor Mark's super technical too, right? So I'm sure that helped the teachers and stuff,
And he was my teacher for my entire white belt. So I would only go to
you were
his,
teaching the fundamentals.
Yeah. So I was training. Of course, I couldn't. I think the rule there was like 3 stripes, and so I had to wait to see Mark. But I was with you, and I think a few other.
But
and
if
I
you,
did
if you
Muay
think
Thai
about
as
kind
well.
of Mark and her have almost like it's kind of a similar body type in the sense. Obviously, he's a really big dude, but he's kind of more compact and strong, and that's how she is versus me, kind of drawn out and not as strong.
Longer and stuff.
Yeah. I learned some really cool
yeah,
stuff.
so he gave you some good stuff too, but for sure.
And you're teaching for a while, and then what was how did you pull the trigger to stop teaching for the school system and open up your jiu-jitsu gym?
Well,
take the leap.
This is going to be my controversial political statement of the day, but it was the unions, man. It was because what happens is it's I know there's a lot of complaints about police unions these days and protecting people who shouldn't be protected, and it's true. Regardless of where you're on the political spectrum, that is true. And it's the same with teachers' unions, like these, the unions standing up for people who are doing inappropriate things. Everybody knows this, but all that kind of stuff. And one of the things that a big victory for the unions, which in my opinion is not a victory for the students, is the tenure system. And so I started teaching in 2008. I was one of the last hires of all USD right before the housing market crashed. And so I nabbed a contract, and I was laid off at the end of that year. And then I got called by kind of like a semi-private organization. They hired me, and then I got laid off. And so every year I'd have to reapply for my own job. I think in my 8 years or 7 years of teaching, I think I taught at like 5 different schools. And moving schools is traumatic.
It's tough, yeah.
It's like you have to reestablish your reputation. You have to learn all these new things.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, it really is very mentally and emotionally taxing. And so it just got to the point where, for example, when I was in Boyle Heights and we did the state testing or whatever, like my student proficiency and advanced rate was 43%. So 43% of my students tested advanced and proficient, and that was twice as high as anybody else, like literally double by short 1%, which always bothered me. But again, back to the kind of competition, like I couldn't be satisfied with almost double. Like I had to have 44, but I was close. And then people would say, oh, it's just because he's social studies is easier. It's like, no, relative to the whole district, I'm the only teacher who also scored above district average. So now you can't say that. And so I was killing myself trying to just do these things that were more relevant to the students that would somehow, because you have a lot of minority students, and when you look at history books, it's mostly white people. And I didn't think it mattered. That was one of the things that changed in my mind. Like, who cares? Like, I don't identify with Martin Van Buren. I don't care either, but I still remember. But there is something about hearing your own story and seeing yourself. And so I killed myself trying to make sure that there was a connection between the students' lives, and that's how you make it. That's how you do it. You have to make it relevant to them as best you can, which is, I think, why people do so poorly in math too, because no one ever takes the time. Whenever you ask the math teacher, what are we going to use this for? They always get mad, don't they? Well, why do people with a good answer don't get mad, do they? Am I right? If I said, oh, professor, why am I doing half guard like this way? You wouldn't storm off and be like, don't ask that.
Yeah, do my best to explain why.
Right? Because you have a good answer.
Yeah.
You have a good answer, right?
It's experience, right?
Experience. You have experience and you have a good answer. If someone asks you a question,
and if you don't know, like you try to answer.
You go out and you find out.
Yeah, that's it.
Exactly.
So I don't know. I'll find out though for you.
And so I, doing all this, and every year I'd get laid off. And then there's, without naming names, but there was a teacher on the second floor. His students got 2% advanced and proficient compared to 44. And this guy gets to stay and I have to go. And so, and it's because, and I was so upset, and I would say, man, the district, screw the district and blah, blah. And my friends had to break the news to me. It's like, you do a better job. You cost less because you get more money the more years you have. And the students want you, the parents want you, the staff wants you. What's the last factor? It's the union. So everybody wanted to keep me. I did a better job and I was cheaper, which, okay, I'll take that. I'll work my way up like everybody else. But then you see, because of this system that has been enforced by the union that's designed to protect older people, and it's created and run by older people, so of course it is. It's designed to perpetuate itself. You just get sick of it. And that's what happened. I got transferred to the last school. I burned down immediately, and I was like, I have to leave. I can't. I'm gonna start doing more damage than I'm doing harm, which I think is another thing that is true between police and teachers. Is there is such thing as doing something for too long, and you do need to change. Adaptive mindset. You know what I mean? You have to. Like you're saying, you have to adapt as as you're changing. And I thankfully I had the wherewithal to recognize. I remember this one kid, like just looking at him, and I remember having a sensation of wanting to be violent towards him. And I'm like, oh, that's
You're
it.
done.
I'm out. And
Yeah.
that's when I said I was out.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously I
stopped
never would have done that, you know, but the fact that I started thinking about it, that's not what I'm here for.
Yeah.
It's time for me to go.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing with police and teachers and a lot of other industries too. And again, I feel that unions are necessary in some capacity and stuff like that, but not to the extent where their sole purpose is to perpetuate themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why I left. Long answer.
Gotcha. And then you guys are married?
We are.
With that already?
Yes, barely.
And so what made you I want to do, instead of switching professions, you're back to teaching again in a different format?
Well, now you can do it under your own, you have now the control, and you don't have to, you could do such a better job. You know, imagine you're a teacher and your principal did your job and now has moved up to administration, whatever.
Right.
And let's say that your performance marks are better than his or hers ever were, and now he or she is telling you what to do. And it's like, I just have to, because really, and Nancy's probably a better resource to talk on this, because really I think if you put her in charge of some sort of educational system or whatever, the whole thing would be torn down and rebuilt in a way that's useful.
I mean, it's kind of crazy with the COVID situation and the kids. Like, I mean, I don't know if we're going to have our kids go back if they have to wear masks and have to have like dividers in between their desks and stuff, plexiglass. Like, I don't know. I'd rather have them. Yeah, you know, I'd rather have them just homeschooled, get a tutor, and have them homeschooled. You know.
We're available.
Nice.
They'll be in great.
Nice,
hands.
and then they can do jiu-jitsu. Boom, we're covered.
We could do PE.
There we go. There we go.
I think for me, you know, because he left the system before I did. I was working in charter schools, so it was similar idea of just like, you know, getting overworked. Especially the charter schools, they purposely got like really young teachers who were ambitious and who wanted to change the world, and they would even give you the keys to the school, like, oh, look at this perk, you know. So I would work countless hours, but the test was a big deal. You know, I was in this class with third graders, and this new Common Core thing came in, and I had to teach these third graders how to do a college paper, essentially, how to cite sources, how to write a 3-page paper with APA citations, and then meanwhile, you know, I'm looking around my room, and you know, I have a kid here who's emotionally battered, you know, from home trauma, and you know, all of these kind of, you know, beautiful souls seeking help and love, you know, and yet administration is like testing. You know, and again, these are third graders, and when you look at a third grader, I don't see the need for why he needs to cite, you know, sources to his paper. You know, back to the thinking, hey, let's create some thoughts on a piece of paper before I have you tell me what, you know, these historians told you on this piece of paper. So that was my last straw, where I had this tough, I had a tough class, and it wasn't tough for me emotionally. It was more of like, I can't even help you the way I should be helping you. And that was when, again, similar idea, where like, hey, let's open a place where we can teach on our own terms, and not have to neglect, you know, like if you can, like, again, coming back to your roles as a teacher, it's like, and you experience this probably too, when an adult comes in, you're not just their jiu-jitsu professor, you're their friend, you're their counselor, you're their mentor, you know, you're so much more. And this was just an opportunity to do that freely without having an administrator knock on your door like, hey, are you doing fractions at 12:30?
Because that's, and I think it was you, Nancy.
Did you guys watch the Scott Sonnen, the Tactic Creators TED Talk?
I haven't, no.
About the different the learning styles and his learning disabilities. Have you seen that?
I don't know. I think
you should watch it.
Yeah, but I have heard of that concept of just like different teaching styles, but
well, the different learning styles. Like he's
like the modalities.
Yeah, you know, you know, like right. You learn through touch, and so he found his learning style through martial arts.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Like through that way,
Right.
he had, and then you know he's like this genius.
Yeah. Right, this new way. Right now, it just it's hit me. I was in
Instead of like, you know, being in, you know, the you know, sitting down in a chair, right? Like not moving, not doing anything.
I always remember this. I was in Oakland, inner city with the Chinese population, like 32 kids. I had like 28 boys, middle schoolers, 7th, 8th grade. And then the rest of, it smells wonderful. And a few girls. And I remember I had them do presentations like, hey, just go speak, prepare little instruction, and the administration comes in and she's like, what's happening? And I was like, oh, they're doing presentations, I had a whole lesson plan, everything I'm supposed to do. Oh, we don't do that here. They sit and you talk. And that's, another eye-opening thing where like, oh, we're, again, this back to this like,
there's only one way. There's only one way.
There's only one answer.
Everybody gets treated the same. Everybody learns the same way.
Right. No exploration. No time.
No seeing how you're interacting with them, how they're responding.
Right.
That was
really with the intent of trying to help them learn, right?
Yeah, even these 3rd graders, again, this is something burned in my memory. At the beginning of of the year, they would say, they would be playful. And I'm like, hey guys, not right now. And then it was summertime, like fall. Hey guys, not right now. I'm so sorry. Not right now, not right now, not right now. And it was the end of the year. And I'm catching myself still say, hey guys, not right now. And it was a tough thing when the 3rd grader, again, all you want to do is play, they want to have fun, they're so joyful, and, again, a kid should do that. You don't want to, it's like the image of like cutting their wings, but I was just told not to do that. There's no time for that. There's no time for them to be human and create relationships. And then you see bullies and all that. Well, why do you think they can't even talk to each other? They can't play with each other. They can't groom each other. They can't.
The last school I was at, one of my kind of last straws.
It's going to be less of that, right? If with the social distancing.
Exactly.
One of my last straws was very similar to that, where like one of the things I did differently in my class, especially when you have a challenged group like we both worked with, was I took the entire first 2 weeks and we didn't do any school. We just did like making moral decisions and in communication, whatever. And I remember the principal coming in at the end of this guy I couldn't stand. He came in at the end of the day, and after his observation, he's like, yeah, at this school, we start instruction right away. It's like, dude, like he wants to build this castle and it's just on sand. It's like, I can't start telling you about the War of 1812 and asking you to stay in your seat if we don't know each other yet.
Right.
And so you're building
culture.
That's how I got the results I got. Yeah,
right.
that's how I got the results I got. And he's still wondering to this day why their school scores.
Have you guys read the book The Talent Code?
Mm-mm.
And they talk about the school KIP, knowledge is power. What's it called?
Yeah,
the charter school.
Yeah.
He talks about it in there and like why they, the different types of learning, right? And how it's a myelinization, right? Getting for an athlete to learn techniques or whatever, like these world class like violinists and just how to learn, and it's like the culture, right? And so you're kind of building culture,
too,
right?
Exposure to other things other than books, material, and the whiteboard.
Right.
The thing that it seems like people don't get in the U.S. is you have, how old are your kids?
My son he just turned 13 and my girls are 11 and a half.
So you've experienced state testing and all this, right? You know anything about that? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like the Common Core and all this. Like I don't get it,
Yeah.
I don't understand. I'm like, what's this?
The Common Core for history is good, but I get what they're trying to do.
I just walk away. I let it eat.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
But it's the thing that's so weird is you keep on hearing like, and you've probably heard this too. Oh, but the scores in Korea, they're smoking us in match. Japan, blah, blah, blah. But you think about it, where do people from all over the world come? They come here. So there's a disconnect between, our scores are lower, but why are all these places with incredibly high scores, why are they all the best and brightest coming here? And so it's like, why haven't you understood that the test scores are not why people are coming here? One of the things that we do better in the United States is that we have a high tolerance of failure. And if you go to some, like, for example, Asian countries and stuff like that, if you don't get it right, there's going to be a lot of consequences socially, familially, and stuff like that.
I heard in Japan, they don't, there's no testing until like 6th or 7th or 8th grade.
Isn't elementary school only moral development, basically?
Right. Yeah. Character development. And then it's not until later years that you get, there's tests and stuff.
Right.
And so now we have
like
a bunch
habits,
of people,
building that culture, right?
Yeah, who don't know who they are and don't know how to behave, but maybe they can do some fractions or something, you know what I mean? But it doesn't catch anybody's attention that all these best and brightest from all these other supposedly high-scoring countries are coming.
My perspective is the main thing is like self-esteem, like what they think of themselves, which you build with like a jiu-jitsu, like community and family, and right, like, mentors and things like that, right?
Man, if I were in charge of jiu-jitsu, it would definitely be, I know Nancy, I'm sure we're all the same mind, but it would be mandatory because it's
yeah, for sure.
It changes so much.
Well, you have to have different things for different people, right? Because people learn differently. So one, but I love TACFIT because you can do everything with TACFIT. So if somebody doesn't like somebody sweating in their eye or something, it's okay, right? It's okay. But you still have those things, those elements that you gain from martial arts in that.
Like even then with jiu-jitsu, even beyond the education and it's I was explaining to my dad, who's never done anything even close to that, and explaining why it's so cool. And it literally informs every action and interaction I have with somebody. In the past, maybe you'd see someone who looked like desperate or in need or something like that, and you would avoid that person because, oh man, who knows what those are. And I don't feel uncomfortable. Like when I'm teaching at the difficult schools or whatever, I never felt unsafe really, because I knew it's sort of, again, back to that Maslow's hierarchy. At the bottom, I always felt like I was safe.
Yeah.
And I feel like, again, maybe the police could also benefit from that, because it's, of course you're going to pull your gun if you feel scared. If you feel your life's going to feel in danger if someone pushes you, because you don't know how to handle someone pushing you. And and I have my uncles, one of them was a retired sheriff, the other one is retired federal police officer. So I'm not knocking them by any means, but I just can't imagine doing that job and not knowing how to control somebody.
No, for sure. It should be like mandatory. Like in Abu Dhabi, I think if you're an officer, you need to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
That's a high bar.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think something I heard, I'm not sure if it's sure, but
Something.
like they have a city, they have a lot of black belts there, training, and they have it in the schools as well.
Well, you should be an expert at defending the person from themselves.
Well, it's like it prevents like really bad stuff from happening for yourself, and then also for the other person, right? So a lot of things can be avoided. I agree. I agree.
I wanted to ask your opinion on this, because I know one of the big things right now, especially in the news with the Floyd killing and stuff like that, where they're banning chokeholds, and it just seems like.
Yeah,
it seemed like that.
I don't know if you watched what's his Jocko on Joe Rogan, but basically, so man, it's crazy, like it's about knowing how to do it.
Yeah.
And that's people making the rules that don't understand that's actually the best thing.
It's so much kinder.
Like you have that's the best way, Right. For example, like if you have a drunk friend, do you want to like break his face by punching him out till he's knocked out, or do you want to be able to choke him out and be like, hey, dude, relax, and you can just take him out like that. But if you don't know when he goes to sleep or not goes, then that's the issue, right? So it's about training people properly. It's not making these rules like that. It's really bad, actually. Yeah. But again, it comes back to the training. If people have the training, or it needs to be mandatory somehow.
Yeah, and I think it brings up one of the cool things. I really like following like John Danaher's stuff. I just like the way he way he thinks is the way I try to think. And one of the distinctions he makes, and you can see it plainly in the way the laws are written when they say chokeholds. And he's like, a choke is when you cut off air. Right. Nobody does that, and you shouldn't do it. A strangle is when you cut off liquid. Strangles should be encouraged in the right situation. Right. Chokeholds, of course, should be banned forever. You don't want to drop pressure on someone's trachea and break their larynx or whatever, And so even you can see there's confusion. Lawmakers making rules, and they don't even know what the words mean.
Right. Well, they're not experts.
Well, it's like the referees in the UFC, right? Like not the referees, the judges, and they don't understand what MMA is, and they have no idea about jiu-jitsu, right? Man, I think it's getting better now, right? But it's like those same things. Those guys are making the rules, so so I don't, obviously I don't think that's right, and it's a kind of counterproductive, and doesn't help the situation. But everybody's on the free will to come in and trade it on their own, right? And so. Hopefully, I think the situation just gets better,
Yeah.
But it's not an easy solution, right? Because they offer training, right? But like it's like the ego, right? Too like speaking of the growth mindset,
we've opened
and
our gym
being able to
nobody.
Right. So it's kind of like letting go of like, hey, to be humbled, but it actually makes you a better person too, right? Because you're able to handle the stress and being in bad positions, right?
Well, I think too that
and stay calm under pressure.
Yeah. The intervention is attempted after they become experts at being something.
Right.
Where the intervention should become before. It should be
For sure.
And I think that's common in every like any social service that usually happens. The intervention, the fixing, the expertise, the experience comes after you're certified to work for the public.
Yeah, and it's man, shoot, I forgot what I was gonna say, but we're talking about the police, the LAPD. Man. Oh yeah. And so I think you and I talked about it the other day where like when I was growing up, one of my dreams was to like go to the moon. Like I had every, like the Mercury missions, the Gemini missions, the Apollo missions. I knew all the crew members. I knew the names of the ships. I knew the names of the land. I mean, like the dates.
Still do.
Yeah. And so, and I just when Apollo 13 came out, I was just like, I can't believe they did this. This is amazing. I was just.
You weren't born yet, right?
What? Oh no, yeah. That was like 1969. So I was like kind of dreaming about the past.
Right.
And you'd always, one of the things I learned about the astronauts that was really helpful for my personality development as a child was, I thought, and I still, and my wife I'm sure will agree, that you have to be right all the time. And one of the things that when I catch myself kind of falling into that pattern is that, it seems like people like that, there are this kind of like brash military guys, whatever, and they're tough and they're right all the time.
Right.
And they get to this certain threshold where they're now secure. And then when you listen to these guys talk to each other or whatever, totally open to suggestions, asking other people's opinions. Hey, what do you guys think about this and blah, blah, blah.
That's good.
And it's just the ultimate sign of being absolutely secure.
Because the reality is we don't know, right? Like the best doctors, all these, neuroscience courses and all these things, like the heavy hitter guys, they were humble enough to say that we think, but we don't know. When you talk to these doctors, like, oh, I know it all because I'm a doctor. Hold on. And then if you question anything, like the same thing as a teacher, oh, how dare you question me, So like that's why I always encourage everybody to ask the doctors questions. Hey, and then see how they respond, right? Do they really understand, or do they have my best interests? Is that really the best option for me to get surgery? What's that?
Did they just come up with that?
Well, it's like you ask them questions. If they're saying, hey, you need surgery, you need to, take some kind of medication, ask questions. Like, why do I need to take medication? And what does this do? Ask questions, right?
Even something simple like when
think on your own, right? It goes back to all those basic things that, where it takes you right where you want to go.
Like even like kind of even on a really basic day-to-day thing, like when we were looking to hire a doula for Nancy when she's a new mom, an 8-month-old at home.
Congratulations.
And, she did most of the work. But one of the...
You had your job, man.
We did this, we invited her over. I did my part. And we invited her over for an interview and she was new. She'd done like maybe 1 or 2 births. So very new relatively. Yeah. And so I was kind of on the fence about, at least in my vote, obviously Nancy had the Trump vote, but, in terms of convincing me, are you the right person? I was like, okay, you've done this maybe twice or something like that. Let's say something comes up and you don't know what the answer is. What are you going to do? And she's like, well, I have a Facebook group that has all the doulas, and I would go on there and ask. And it's like, as soon as she said, if I don't know something, I'm going to go ask people who do know about it. I was like, she's hired as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. That's it, right? She has the right mindset.
Yeah.
Which is the most, going back to the original question, right? What makes people successful or not successful.
Yeah. So just flexibility and adaptability, which is as Nancy will tell you, is a battle for me every day. No.
But I mean, even jiu-jitsu, right? It's like, it's probably, like I think you changing up your mindset. I want to be a guard passer. Yeah, I'm comfortable in the guard, but I need to get comfortable in the uncomfortable. Yeah, and even just probably training jiu-jitsu and like being consistent with it. It's like the warrior mindset.
Yeah, it beats the truth into you. Yeah. And
but it builds a habit of like how for life, right? Yeah. To live your life the right way.
It forces honesty upon you whether you want it or not. And the days you don't want to go are the days you must go.
Yeah, that's it.
It also teaches you to take a break. I worked so hard to get, I got my black belt from you maybe 6 months, 9 months.
What is it now? We're in June.
He's basically as old. The belt is as old as the baby, so 8 months.
8 months.
And
that's interesting.
And it was and even after that, I told you at first you're not going to see me for a month. I think I waited a week, but even just
that was funny.
Working, He's like,
I was like a nod, like a respect nod, like I'm gonna take a break. People say I don't do it for the belts, but I did it for the belts.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I'm gonna probably take a break. You told me one-on-one. You're like, I'm probably gonna take a break. And then I see you like the next few days. It was like the next week.
Even a week, but it also forces you to like, hey, my body's rebelling against me.
Yeah, for sure.
And so at least I did a week. I couldn't stay away for longer.
Yeah.
But that's another thing. I don't know if you have any history on this because what year did you start?
94.
Okay, so you started like 6 years. But we're both kind of old schoolish. I'm a weird old school in the sense that I took 10 years off, so I'm missing a bunch.
Yeah.
But I kind of remember the old days. Yeah, I was all in as well for that period of time. But one of the things, what was the thing I was just going to ask you? What were we just talking about? Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, the belts.
Yeah.
Why? Okay, because I said when I was giving my little speech thing or whatever that like I care deeply about that.
Yeah.
Like that was something I've been looking forward to. That. I remember when I first started Machado, there was a black belt hanging there and I was a white belt.
Yeah.
And I was back there with my little friends. We're little high school kids, whatever. And I was like, well, that looks cool. I just want to see what it looks like. I take this guy's belt off the thing and I put it on. Well, the owner of the belt walks into the locker room and that was not, never did it again, But why do you think that people on one hand say, oh, I don't care about the belts. I don't care. And as soon as they get whatever belt, they're crying, oh, Facebook, oh, I just want to thank everybody. So why do you think people say in my opinion, lie, or at least they're not honest to themselves maybe? Why do you think people say, I don't care about belts, but then when they get one, they're super thrilled? Why can't they just accept that, like, yeah, it means something to me?
Oh, for sure. It means, for sure, I think from my perspective after doing it all these years, like, the belt, it's not about the belt, right? It's not about, I want to get my black belt in 2 years. I want to get, it's easy to say that, I want to get my black belt. Yeah, somebody wanted the black belt in 2 years.
Like, can I do it in 2 years?
Yeah, if I train 3 hours privately and for, but it's not about that, right? It's about the journey.
Yeah.
Because it's in that journey of changing your mindset and the processes, like, hey, instead of I have a good guard, but I need to get my top game better. Yeah. And just like, that's the process, right? That's the real, like, gold medal. That's the real black belt, right? Yeah. It's the journey. It's the chase, whatever you want to call it, but it's the journey. And so I think that should be, that's the focus. That's the, if I see that, when I see that, that like people got that, I'm like, okay, well, that guy, he's got it, and I talk to everybody too, like everybody that was that got their black belts. I have like a little interview, and I talk to.
I think. Why would he ask me like about black belt if he's not going to give it to me unless he's just a total dick? Like,
I talk to everybody, and for sure, because you want to see where they're at, and they understand, on a deeper level. It's
a I explain it to my parents again. They don't know anything about it, so they're like, wait, why are they waiting so long? Why are they blah blah? Because you're good, and you're because I tell them about like what my life is like,
but going back to your question, going back to your question, I think for me that's what I try to instill, and that's why like the stripes and stuff, we don't like, some people don't get any stripes, at all, so I try to instill that, and that's why like, if you come in for 2 months, you get a stripe. If you come in for 3, it's entitled to me because I'm paying. Like, no, like that's not the type of place where we are, Mm-hmm. And I think it's working, for sure you need to be organized and things like that and be present and all that. But I think it's kind of ingrained, and that's the culture that we have. Mm-hmm. So because of that culture that we have, that's the mindset that people have. And so it's not about the belts. It's about, showing up, having the growth mindset, doing all the right things. And so I think, but it does mean so much because it's a acknowledgement of their hard work, of their being a champion, of being a warrior, never giving up, coming in on the days that you don't feel like coming in, passing the guard when you want to be in the guard, challenging yourself and being that warrior, being that champion, and that carries over into every single thing. And of course, like, I don't know if, it's different for everybody, right? But like you have all these, like, it's so emotional, you think about all these memories and things that happened probably in those years of you training, like, your baby getting married, little like landmarks. all these landmarks.
I was a purple belt at that time.
So that's the constant, right? That's the constant that's been there.
That's true.
Shoulder injuries and like, I wish I would have. They kept going and came back. Nobody told me about, just all these different things, And so it's like acknowledgement, like I did it, and I am champion. I am a warrior. I can do anything I put my mind to. Because it's not easy, to get your black belt.
That's what I'm thinking. Like
and to be honest, like, man, maybe like how I can change my mind. That day, it's like people, well, not for sure, I don't know. That's how I feel. That it makes it like organic, makes it real.
Just kind of empathizing with you. Obviously, you need your 2 degrees or more to give and whatever, and I have a lot of time before that happens. But kind of putting myself in your shoes the best I can. It's like, I would be so hesitant too. Like, obviously, I've been doing this long enough to respect the belts, even when I'm giving up my blue belts and purple belts and stuff like that, or even stripes to a white belt or whatever. I really put a lot of consideration into it, but I can't imagine how much different it is with you, because when you, for example, if a black belt goes out into the world, no one's, and you say I moved to Africa or something like that, say, oh, no one's going to say, who gave you your blue belt? You know, no one cares. It's always, who gave you your black belt? Because now when you give something like that, that person, you're essentially, in a weird sense, married to that person for the rest of your life. Because now this person, whether you stay together or you're still, you know, good friends, or you get along, or whatever the relationship is, you're stuck with the person you gave it to, because you can't take it back once you've given it to them. Right? Is that kind of how you feel? Like, you kind of feel like this is very serious.
You know, yes, you know, but there's maybe some like relationships, and you just kind of, I think it's about the relationship, right? Like even this whole constant and you should always, I don't know, for me, the relationship is really important, you know, and it makes it special, and it makes you also live that example. If you had a good mentor or good experience, I guess, you know, the right experience. I think you just, I don't know, like, you're asking me if you went to their black belt and we're married forever. I don't have to be married, you know. I can be like, screw that guy, you know. He's, you know, for whatever reason I changed my mind, you know. Not that I didn't give him his black belt that day, but, you know, I don't know. He tricked me, you know. Yeah. You know, but overall, like, it hasn't happened. Like, I don't feel like that about anybody. So,
because that person's now in the world and is going to be saying for the rest of his or her life, where'd you get your black? Oh, I got it from Alberto Crane, you know. And so, and now if that person goes out and becomes a D-bag, it's like, oh, well, why did you know? And so now your name is tarnished.
I mean, I have so many black belts now, like it kind of thins it up.
Do you know how many off the top of your head?
You know, I know he had like 30 in New Mexico, so it's growing for sure. And I remember like thinking like, oh, I want to have 100 like black belts that I've personally like trained, that I have relationships with, and that doesn't mean necessarily like from white belt to black belt, you know. But it's definitely like, it's getting up there, you know.
That's true.
And we're growing, you know, and we're doing it, you know.
Yeah, one day.
Yeah.
Maybe I will. One thing Nancy will never accept from me is any belt or any stripe at all. Which is another reason why
any stripe or any belt.
Yeah, she will not train with me. She doesn't take my classes anymore.
I see.
But again, it's
tack fit, Nancy,
yeah.
tack fit.
But it'd be so easy for her to do that, and there's nothing wrong with a husband or what, you know, if she were the black belt, and there's nothing wrong with me getting my stripes from her, or vice versa, or whatever. But it's just
I'll never know if it's true or not.
If you want to understand Nancy, I think that's the best thing to say is that her husband's a black belt and she'll never accept a promotion from him. You know, that's Nancy in a nutshell. Pros and cons.
You know, give her a stripe for dinner.
Yeah.
Good job, honey.
That's what it would feel like to me. You know, like, oh, good job, honey. And it's like, no.
Then there's this like weird power dynamic, because then she like wants this promotion from me, but she's also like,
that's strange, huh?
Yeah, you know.
No, well, she can't be my everything.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to ask about the legacy Boyle Heights. You know, you guys opening up that gym kind of went all over the place, but kind of going back to that,
weird timing.
You know, you did it was Club Los Angeles. You guys were changing the name to Legacy Boyle Heights. You know, because that's the name. But be proud, right? Where you're from and represent. And why Boyle Heights? Why that area?
We both have different answers. Do you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
Well, I think in general, I mean, we lived across the street, basically.
Gotcha.
That was the first thing, and then on top of that, Bryan, was at Boyle Heights and Mendez, and I
the high school.
Basically grew up there. You know, not grew up, but 18, 19, 20, I kind of got my experience through some of the schools there in Hollenbach. So I had a lot of relationships with students there, and just the restaurant. I just basically hung out there a lot. So when it was time to do something important, like opening up a jiu-jitsu school, I figured it would be the best place to attempt to beautify what it would be like for you to come and experience a martial art, in Boyle Heights, and for the people of Boyle Heights.
They don't have maybe that opportunity, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that was our goal from the beginning. Like, let's be in a place where we're not expected to be, and let's invite the community. We're right over the bridge of the Arts District downtown in Boyle Heights, and attempting to merge these communities that they would have never been in the same room, let alone sitting on top of one another and helping one another. And that was our main thing. And it was
gentrification, anti-gentrification was hot during that time. And, you know, there was some fear, but, you know, again, we felt like we had been there.
We had been participating in the community enough to where we felt
feel confident, yeah.
Right, and that
I felt right.
Yeah,
you
you know,
that was my.
you know, I think Nancy worked in the neighborhood a little bit and similar neighborhoods, and she's kind of part of that culture. And then, you know, I think I got some sweat equity into the culture just by, you know, like I just imagined. Yeah, I imagined in my head of, you know, if people came and said, hey, you know, what are you doing as a white guy owning a business here? She's like, I put in my time. I sent kids from this neighborhood, right? I can point across the street. I sent a kid over there to collole. You know what I mean?
Students came.
Yeah, and my students came. And actually one of them,
awesome.
Cindy, trained with you today.
Oh, wow.
You'll know if you saw her. But she was one of my high school students, and she came here by herself.
Cindy, blue belt.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
I saw that.
High school students.
Oh, no way. That's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I mean,
She's changed her life around.
Like
Yeah.
My mom had, you know, she's high school. She's all grades, you know, elementary to high school. So it's nice. It's beautiful. I really value that and respect that a lot.
I just liked you know, not only did I spend a lot of time there, but
shows you like you're a really good teacher and you really care, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I did my best.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's another
to
thing
have
people
to see that, you know, after.
Yeah. Like when people shy away from saying,
you're not just like, you know, it's a paycheck or, you know, whatever. And that's why you walked away, right?
Yeah, you know, and I think just as people shy away from, and this is another weird phenomenon, maybe you've seen it or you notice the same thing, but like just like people say, you know, like, oh, I don't care about belts, but they're really happy when they get it. People also don't want to say they tried hard. Like, I did a really good job, not because I'm talented, because I tried really hard.
Yeah.
You know, and people don't want to say they tried hard at something. Like, why don't you want to say you tried hard? You know, but I always I think when growing up, I always craved the authenticity that I think maybe my hometown felt like it was lacking. It's kind of like Real Housewives of Orange County kind of vibe sometimes. And I just loved the people who live in that community are exactly how they present themselves.
Jiu-jitsu.
You know what I mean? And I remember one of the things with I think one of the things that also separated Nancy until I was a brown belt, I was never really had any success in competition. And I think, and then I would look at Nancy, my wife, and she had a lot of success in competition, in my opinion. And I was like, and I would see her and just be like, she just wants to win. And then it started to click with me, like, I fought hard to get good grades. I fought hard to get in college, blah, blah, blah. But I never had to fight for my life or my well-being, because her, you know, she had it hard growing up. And you can see that out there. And the people who come in from our neighborhood are not wimps. You know what I mean? The people in Boyle Heights are a strong group of people who have to, sometimes life is day to day. And when life is day to day,
have you heard of
you know how to fight.
Dan Pena? You know who he is? He's like a kind of a self-help kind of person, you know, but he's a real, you know, deal. And he's from the hood, you know, obviously. He was called the $50 billion man. And now he's like the $1 trillion man. He has a castle in the UK. And guess where he's from? That was like kind of my omen, you know, for like Boyle Heights.
Oh, really?
Grew up in the hood, and he was going down the wrong path. Then he went to the military. His dad was a police. You know, it's a really cool story. You know,
Will.i.am is from there.
There you go. Will.i.am, huh?
Ragosa's from there.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was one of the things that I think watching Nancy kind of, and I learned from a couple other people, is like, I thought that to win in a competition or to win in a match, you had to know more. I know more than you, and so I'm going to win. And then you know more than me, and so you're going to win. And it's
Will.i.am, huh?
Yeah. You know,
cool.
But it's funny, like, you have to really want to win.
Yeah.
And I didn't get that until like 2 years ago. You know, and it sounds silly, but you have to really want it. And then not only that, but you have to have a very small game. You watch the best people, they do 3 things, and they do them really. Do they know how to do everything else? Could Haji Gracie Barambole you? Of course he could. Is he going to? There's no way. If there's a medal on the line, he's gonna pull guard. He's gonna let you get a knee up. He's gonna sweep you over. He's gonna pass him out, and he's gonna strangle you. Can he do everything else? Of course he can. You never see him do it though, you know. And so understanding what it takes, and I think also spending time with you has also helped me with that, of understanding what it takes to win something, is just kind of a little bit of more single-mindedness. And a determination. And so, yeah, you're learning all the time. Yeah, it's really cool.
Well, I thank you, Professor Bryan.
Yes, thank
Nancy.
you for having us.
You know, hanging out and talking to you guys, and really excited about Legacy Boyle Heights and continuing and growing and just making everything better, you know, and making a difference, right? Making a difference at the end of the day, you know, and making the world a little bit better. This crazy COVID situations and you know, political stuff going on.
It's 1968 all over again, but we're also going back into space. You know, so
we went to space,
you know,
right? We went back to
so
space.
It's
you know, it's funny, right? We have a guy that works for SpaceX, you know, and they never shut, right? They never stopped. And you know, it's in Hawthorne, right? It's the SpaceX here, so they never stopped. You know, they were working, right?
Consequences be damned.
What's that?
Consequences.
Well, they had I guess an outbreak in the Texas
they shut that one
thing. Well, they never shut it down. They just like, you know, quarantine whoever had to quarantine, and then the guys tested, you know, because they go back and forth, right? But they just kept moving forward, you know. Yeah. It's too important, right? It's too important not to. And they, you know, that's why, you know, Elon Musk is really outspoken, right, against the closures of his Tesla plant and up north and stuff.
Very strange times. Our baby's going to be a quarantine baby.
Right?
What was it like in the before times?
Oh my God!
I saw
we got to spend a lot of time, right, together. So that's cool.
I got to see him crawl. Man, I keep on telling people, if this is the 50s and she's at home wearing high heels and a dress, and I am off at the office coming home, I wouldn't know anything about my kid.
Right.
You know, I took a month and a half.
There's always silver lining, right?
Yeah, you know, we have a new baby, and so we took the cautious route and shut down the gym for 2 months or something.
Oh, we all had to. We didn't know, right? We didn't know.
Yeah. You know, you have to make sure you feel comfortable before you do something.
Protect the community.
Yeah, and exactly. And so, I got to see him do these things I never would have gotten to see. So it's really been, it's really cool.
Nice.
Anyway, yeah, thanks for having us. Really, really good time.
How can people find out about Legacy Boyle Heights? Hopefully, there'll be a link on legacybjj.com soon.
So we'll link up. We're moving everything for July 1st.
Okay.
So July 1st on our Instagram, everything will be up.
Maybe we'll post something on Instagram, or we'll make sure it's
Legacy Boyle Heights, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll make sure everybody knows.
Cool. Thank you guys.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.